welcome to this leadership series on credit default swaps brought to you by the Banker magazine and FT Mandate. My name is Michelle Price, I'm the Trading and Technology Editor of the Banker magazine, and I'm joined here today by a panel of distinguished industry experts.
I'm Pete Axelrod, I'm Managing Director for DTCC OTC Derivative Services.
Hello, I'm Richard Metcalfe. I'm Head of Policy for ISDA, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. I deal with a wide range of issues to do with the OTC derivatives markets.
Anthony BELCHAMBERS, Chief Executive of the Futures and Options Association.
Hi, I'm John O'Neill. I'm the Manager of CDS at NYC Life.
Hi, I'm Kim Taylor, President CME Clearing with CME Group.
Now, this time last year, few individuals operating outside the credit derivatives industry had heard of, let alone encountered, a credit default swap. But with the collapse of Lehman Brothers in September last year, this anonymity was all but obliterated, catapulting the global CDS industry into the political and regulatory limelight. In the controversy that has followed, the future of the CDS industry, in particular the issue of its regulatory oversight and its operating infrastructure, are being hotly debated. Anthony BELCHAMBERS, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, yes, is the short answer to that. We are going to expect that, but it's very important that it observes certain caveats, and those caveats sit around, if you like, delivering on customer and counterparty needs, which are often complex, preserving market and product diversity through the whole cycle of regulatory reform and the delivery of more regulatory intensity sitting over markets. And it is very important to bear in mind also that we have to sustain the competitiveness of those markets. And so we need to be very careful not to be, put it this way, regulatory compression doesn't become market compression.
Mm-hmm. Richard, why don't you follow on from that? I know that perhaps your views on this are not totally in line. Do you think that we need this great big wave of regulatory oversight?
I think we're going to get it. I think it's actually quite healthy to have the debate. I think what the debate needs to do, though, is focus on what forms of regulation already exist, because some do. Look at ways in which those could be extended. Look at whether we're talking about regulation per se, or perhaps market-driven transparency, which could deliver huge benefits. What I think we also have to do is try and lift it out of this more general and quite visceral reaction to financial markets generally. We need to have a fully educated debate.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we're having a fully educated debate, Peter?
I think there's a lot of education that is needed on the part of a lot of the participants in the debate.
Including the regulators?
I think regulators are now at the point of getting themselves more educated than they were before on these markets. Some regulators are very well educated, and some are just learning. And I think there's probably, until recently, a fair amount of misconception about the degree to which credit default swaps contributed or didn't contribute to the current economic crisis. I think my own view is that they, in general, contributed way less than anybody thought. And in general, until we started actually publishing the outstanding credit default swaps, which we have been since November, folks had really overestimated the amount that was outstanding and didn't understand completely how much exposures actually netted.
I agree with Peter's comments. I think among some of the regulators there's a very high level of knowledge, and I think what we're seeing post-Lehman's is many of the other regulators getting up to that level of knowledge. And one thing we've really stressed is that in terms of moving forward global regulation on this topic, it needs to be very globally considered. So primarily, I think in the first instance, European and US regulators are linking up and having the same policy framework. But beyond that, really, I think all global regulators being on the same page. And I think in terms of reducing the notional outstanding, that's led on the debate onto central clearing and the different providers in that space. So I think that's very relevant.
Okay, well, we can talk a little bit more about the sort of the globality or not a little bit later. I was interested, Anthony, what you said about sort of the risk of the sort of the regulation or compressing the industry. From your point of view, in terms of the discussions you're having with people, are there any worrying developments? What do you think that the kind of the future risks are where the regulatory regime is concerned?
Well, part of the problem is regulators inherently don't like risk, because it's a risk to achieving their public policy objectives to some extent. And so part of my worry, and I say it's only my worry really, is that the whole process of regulatory oversight, greater regulatory intensity, could morph into becoming market compression, which means actually we have less complex instruments that are permitted to be traded out there. So in other words, you get a sort of form of product compression, which goes hand in hand with tighter regulatory oversight. I think that would be a terrible mistake, and I think particularly in this climate, counterparties often need to be able to manage their risks very carefully. They need to have sometimes complex instruments, and we must be careful not to deny them that opportunity of meeting customer needs.
I would very much agree with Anthony in that regard. I know that there are moves in various jurisdictions to consider. Certainly back home in the U.S., there are moves that have been brought forward to require all credit default swaps to be cleared, or even to go so far as to require all of them to be traded in an exchange-traded environment. And that is simply not, I don't think, a viable solution for the marketplace. I know innovation in financial markets is probably not a very popular term right now, but I think it is a very important part of what the financial markets and the capital markets bring to the overall economy. And I think we need to be careful that the regulation is both global in nature and thoughtful in nature, so that we don't impede future innovation.